Hello, you are listening to Just Films and That. This is the podcast where we talk about films we think might be underrated, underseen, or sometimes, well, we just want to talk about them. I'm the host this week, Josh Hallam, and I'm joined, as ever, by my co-host, Alice Oliver. Alice.
Hello.
You alright?
Yeah, good. Alright.
Excited?
You alright?
Yeah, I'm alright, yeah.
Did you say, am I tired?
Why? No, are you excited?
I
Are you
thought you
tired?
said, am I tired?
Are
I
you
was like,
tired?
I'm not tired. No, I feel
I don't
great.
know. You're in another room. In a different house.
I'm fine. I'm not tired, but yeah, I'm very excited.
You've just been on holiday?
I have been on holiday to lovely Norfolk. It was
Lovely
beautiful.
Norfolk. Yeah, very nice. Very nice. And of course, I must say, not to let people down the curtain, but happy St. David's Day.
Oh, indeed, yes. Dydd Gwyl Dewi, Dewi Sant, Dydd Gwyl Dewi, hapus I pawb. My hen wlad fy nhadain. I don't know all the words.
And that's the perfect opportunity to bring in our very bewildered guest for this week. Pav, how you doing? You okay?
Pav.
What the hell is going on?
Well, Alice,
I just need to check, Alice. You can't smell burnt toast or anything. I'm just wondering whether or not you're having a stroke or something. Then you okay?
No, that you mention it. No, I'm good.
Think fast. Think fast.
Just listen.
I know
indeed. The Welsh language is, it's a colourful language. Doesn't always come across, like you're speaking actual words. But those were genuine words I was saying. I promise.
Wonderful. Well, happy St. David's Day to everybody.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All of everyone out there.
Yeah.
How are you doing, Pav? You okay?
I'm doing all right. Yeah. I was. I've just realised. Right. So, do you need to do a little thing about saying what the movie is we're talking about today?
Yeah, we haven't even mentioned it, have we?
Yeah, but it depends. What were you going to say, Pav?
Well, something I've just put on my shirt. Right, I've got a baseball shirt on, which I've had since 1991. When I went to LA with my brother, I bought this because it has Jackson on the back. And so what is it? 1991. That is 32 years ago that I bought this. Adamant that this was a Shoeless Joe Jackson shirt.
Yeah, sure.
I just did a little bit of research, and it's not. It's Reggie Jackson.
Is it not the wrong team?
Exactly, because it's New York Yankees, where it should have been. I'm not sure who Shoeless Joe played for. The Cubs and the White Sox. It was the White Sox he played for.
Yeah.
So I've learned something already in the fact that this shirt I've been proudly had in my my cupboard, thinking it was a Shoeless Joe. It's a Field of Dreams shirt.
Do you think the warranty has gone on that now?
I don't think I'm going to get a refund.
No,
I really doubt that the shop in LA is still there. Possibly.
Oh, that in 1991, if you paid whatever for that, it would be worth a tenth of that now.
It probably is.
Yeah. So anyway, that leads us on nicely to this week's film, which is Field of Dreams from Pav 1989.
I believe it was, yes.
1989. Good year.
It was a great year.
I was
born that year.
Alice was born.
Christ almighty, now I feel really old.
Yeah.
Yeah, you go to LA in 1991, it's like, oh, I was just 2 years old.
What makes Pav old?
Everything.
So Field of Dreams, if you've not seen it, spoilers for Field of Dreams, but Pav, so you guys picked this between you, right? So Alice, so it was your turn to pick.
Yes.
So sort of a classic, it's a joint effort. You pincer movement towards me, insisting that I like this film in some sort of long planned out saw trap of a podcast episode. Alice, so what's it about? Why did you pick it, and why did you get Pav involved?
So this is kind of a triple whammy. So it was coming up to being my turn to pick a classic, and when I was on Pav's podcast talking about top 10 favourite movie quotes, one of your quotes, I believe, Pav, was from the film Field of Dreams, and you started talking about it, and you lit up when you started talking about it, and it sounded like you had a real passion for it, and I was like, I knew the name, and I didn't really know what it was about, but when you said the quote, I recognised that, and I knew that Kevin Costner was in it, I think, so I was like, oh, you know what? I reckon that's probably a classic, so I'm going to pick that as my next classic. But because you'd suggested it, that also makes it a listener suggestion. And because you're here with us right now, it's also a guest episode. So this is the first time this has ever happened. So we've got the triple whammy. It's a classic, it's a guest, and it's a listener suggestion. I think this may be the best episode we've ever done already, and we've not even got into it. But Field of Dreams, so I'll give a bit of a summary about it, but Pav, please do chime in at the end if you feel I've missed anything. So, Field of Dreams is a sport fantasy drama film with Kevin Costner as the lead. He plays Ray Kinsella, a man with serious daddy issues who starts to hear a voice that tells him, if you build it, he will come. This, along with a vision he has of a baseball field, convinces him to dig up part of his cornfield in Iowa to build a baseball field. The ghost of shoeless Joe Jackson then appears on the field and eventually brings along some of his ghost buddies to play games of baseball. After the trials and tribulations of the film that involve James Earl Jones, Ray's dead dad appears on the field and has a catch with his son, seemingly setting Ray free from any regrets and fears that he had about his life and death. Did I do that justice?
Pretty good.
I think so,
That
yeah.
is pretty good.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Pav.
Obviously, we're saying this is a classic. So the ratings we will look at, but we are here to decide, is Field of Dreams a classic? Pav, you on board with that? Are we saying classic? That what we're going into this with?
It's been in all the movie top 10s that we've done, like the greatest movies, movie quotes, Kevin Costner movies, which was one that has just come out.
Wow, a whole category for Kevin. Yeah.
A whole category for Kevin. And it did re-spark my love for Kevin Costner, because he went through an amazing run of movies. Field of Dreams, Bull Durham, Untouchables,
Dances with Wolves.
Robin Hood, Dances with Wolves, No Way Out. I'm going to include Waterworld because I think Waterworld's great.
I think Waterworld is pretty good, Pav. And I'll let you in on something. It's on my list. It's on my list for this podcast.
It's better not be.
Coming soon.
It fucking better not be, Alex.
I'll tell you what, the thing is, if you take it I know we're talking about Field of Dreams, but if you take Waterworld as a fun action movie, then they're not the kind of action movies they make anymore, where it's all CGI. This was massive sets, loads of fun. Dennis Hopper being an absolute, just chewing up the scenery, chewing up the sea, is fantastic. But let's get away from Waterworld.
We can talk about that.
We can.
In a few weeks.
We can. Yeah, absolutely.
A few weeks. Oh, here we go.
But for me, Kevin Costner, I'm sure someday we're down the line, we're going to do our top 10 actors, and Kevin Costner will be in my top 3. I'm pretty sure.
Oh,
Wow,
top on a podium.
Without a doubt. And at the moment, I'm really Kevining out on Kevin Costner because we're into Yellowstone as well at the moment, and it's old gruff Kevin Costner, but he's still cool. He's still good looking. He's still the man I've always wanted to be. In Field of Dreams, I've always wanted his hair. To be honest, I'd have anybody's hair at the moment because I've got none of my own. But in Field of Dreams, his hair is just
excellent hair in it. It's a good barn at that.
Oh, yeah, it's fantastic.
It is. I didn't realise until I saw this film. We'll come on to likes of it in a minute, but just talking about his hair. I didn't realise in this film how much young Kevin Costner looks a lot like young Bradley Cooper.
I'd give you that.
Look at them next to each other when they've got the swept back hair and the blue eyes. Oh, tell you what.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. But it's good. It's everything. You say about a perfect movie. This for me, every single part of the movie, whether it's the script, the music, I had the soundtrack. The soundtrack is absolutely beautiful. The music on its own will make you tear up. It's got Kevin Costner was at the start of his heartthrob career. This is his James Stewart moment, this movie. But he also had legends in the movie. Burt Lancaster, James Earl Jones, these like mammoth people of Hollywood. And I don't think there's anything about the movie you can go, well, I like that bit, but that bit's a little bit, nah. Everything about this movie is perfect.
Wow.
High praise indeed.
In your top 5 movies of all time?
It was my number 3, I think, in my top 10 movies.
Star Wars episode 4, episode 5, episode 6.
No, I think if I remember correctly, it was episode 4 was number 1. Raiders of the Lost Ark was number 2. And
Great
I think
shout.
Field of Dreams was number 3.
Wow.
That was our Christmas special that just went. So.
Is it a coincidence that James Earl Jones is in this, or did that lead you down the road to find this?
It was because of Kevin Costner.
That was the whole
point.
Right.
I was totally in love with Kevin Costner at this point. I was watching anything that there was a straight to DVD or straight to video, might have been back then. The kids, you two, video was a thing where you used to put these big chunky tapes.
Oh yeah.
Tape was something that you used to string out, you know.
You had to rewind it. You got fucking fined from Blockbuster.
Exactly. Be Kind, Rewind. And there was a movie called The Gun Runner. And I bought that. Never ever watched it, but I bought it because it was a very early Kevin Costner movie. So I was like just totally in the Kevin Costner zone. I zoned out a little bit sort of post The Postman. He lost me a bit with The Postman. But then there's been a couple of other movies that I've watched of him old. But now with Yellowstone, I'm right back in the Kevin Costner groove.
Okay. Is this our first Kevin Costner film, Alice?
I would have thought so. I've definitely not picked one.
So I haven't, which I'll come on to in a minute. I've never picked a Kevin Costner film, which I'll come on to.
But so it's not the last, though, Alice? It's not the last.
I can't wait.
I want to come back for that one as well.
Yeah, maybe you will.
What if like you two just watch it and like
yeah, okay. Josh can take a break.
I can go off and watch like something good. Anyway,
well, like Ace Ventura.
Yeah, like the second Ace Ventura. Oh, all right. Anyway, so let's get stuck into it then. So, Alice, had you seen this one before?
I had not seen it before, which
Hence
was a big part of the reason. Yes, big part of the reason why I want to pick it. We always try and pick the classics that we haven't seen, and it's interesting to see sort of either the bits of dialogue, the quotes, the characters, the references, or whatever that you still see today in modern pop culture, and then you can sort of decipher. Well, that's reverberated through the decades, through the years. So you can sort of assess whether it's a classic or not that way. But no, hadn't seen it. Had you seen this one?
No, I hadn't seen it. So I knew about it. I knew what it was. It's one of those films that, it is, you could argue, and we'll come on to this in the deciding bit, but you could argue that it's so intrinsically linked now in sort of culture that it is a classic. If they build it, they will come. That is a very well-known, sort of quote. And then I knew what it was. So I knew a whole thing about it was ghosts of baseball players and stuff like that. But I'd never seen it, and I was interested to go into it and watch it because, and I'll come on to this now, and we'll get this bit out of the way. Is I'm not a big Kevin Costner fan. So until I watched this film, I didn't think he was a very good actor.
Okay.
Have thoughts?
Is that because of Waterworld? Is that what you're basing that on?
No, it's I'd not seen loads of films. I'd definitely seen Dances with Wolves. I remember thinking it was really boring. I've seen JFK. I fell asleep. Robin Hood is a great film.
To be fair, JFK is pretty long.
Robin Hood is a great film in which he is shit. Well, he's not shit. It's just like commit to an accent, Kev. No. It is a brilliant film. I love Prince of Thieves. I love.
But you have to put that to one side. Again, Robin Hood is very much like Waterworld. It's a great romp.
Yeah.
It's a good old-fashioned Sunday afternoon action film.
It is, and it's that it's the bit where he's like they're pulling up at Dover, and he's like, "I'm home," and you're like, "Where are you from?" Like, and then they walk to Nottingham in 20 minutes.
20 minutes,
easy. We've all done it.
Easy. They go over that wall. Easy.
Over Hadrian's Wall, which is hundreds of miles north of Nottingham. But anyway. But I've never seen anything. I've just never rated him. I've never seen anything when I'm like, I can see why this guy. Oh, I've tried to watch The Bodyguard as well, which, you're not really watching that for Kevin Costner, are you? It's, it's about the two of them and the soundtrack, isn't it? But, so, and also I thought he was quite miscast in Man of Steel as well.
Do you think? I thought he was the best thing about Man of Steel.
Because it depends. I don't know what it is about. I think, do you know what? It's probably not his fault. I think what annoys me about that film, spoilers, skip ahead 1 minute if you've not seen Man of Steel, is that Superman could save him.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt.
So that the whole point of Jonathan Kent dying is that he has a heart attack and Superman can't save him. And it's like, you can't save everybody.
Yeah.
But in that bit, he's like, oh no, just let me die in this big tornado. And it's like, that's not the point. But anyway, so I was interested to go in this, and I have to say, and I'll come on to what Alice liked in a minute, but he changed my mind in this film.
Okay.
But I'll come to you first, Alice. So, what did you think initially? What did you like about it?
So I thought it was wonderful. I really did.
Wonderful.
There's so much that I liked about this film, and we'll go through some of it now, but I couldn't fit it all into this list. So I think the world building in this is brilliant. So I really enjoyed the opening sequence where we find out all about Ray and his dad through the use of photographs, archive footage, and voiceover. So the voiceover is really well written. It tells you everything you need to know without it being too formulaic or it just feeling like heartless exposition dumping. Like, even though you don't know anything yet about these characters characters and the story, you start to really care about them very early on. And it feels like there's a lot of heart in the words used, and Kevin Costner puts a good amount of emotion behind what he's saying. So it has a really strong impact, and it means that by the time we get into the meat of the film, you feel like you already understand why Ray would do what he does and why he's so impacted by certain things. It's so much funnier than I thought it was going to be, but not in the sort of big jokes, laugh out loud sort of way. It's just certain remarks and interactions between the characters, mostly between Ray and his wife Annie, who just seem to have such a deep and significant connection to one another. You really believe their bond, I think, and their relationship. And James Earl Jones is really funny in this, but again, it's not about big jokes or gags or anything like that. Like, it's all to do with the way in which he interacts with Ray. And when they first meet, so Ray turns up at his flat, and that whole interaction there is just so entertaining, and their whole dynamic and their chemistry with one another was really interesting to watch, I thought. Do you regard this as a comedy, Pav? Like, do you think of it as a comedy?
I think of it as a fantasy film. That's what it is. But it's got great, like you say, when Ray Kinsella and Terrence Mann first meet, and Ray basically kidnaps him to get to a baseball field, a baseball game, and he sticks his hand in his pocket like he's got a gun. And he said, "You got to come with me." And then he picks up a baseball bat and he says, "Oh no, there's no rules here." He said, "Oh, you got to come with me. You got to come with me." And he's like, "No, I'm going to beat you over the head with this baseball bat until you leave." And he goes, "You're a pacifist." "Oh, shit." He gets him. But there are moments in the movie, like you said, the interaction between Amy Madigan and, I think they're at a school meeting, aren't they?
It's the parents' evening thing.
Yeah. And this woman says, "Oh, your husband was a stupid ass and plowed under his corn. Oh, you want to take it outside?" And they start almost fighting. There's some great moments in it, but that's the thing about the movie, is it's perfect in the fact that it couples that opening scene with there's the main theme of the music, which is just heartbreaking and beautiful, but it's played by just a simple piano while he's talking about his father, and he's talking about what his father did, and about the history of the White Sox, and the whole when they were, I think, was it Eight Men Out was the movie that I think was about the
band players.
Yes, and that's who Shoeless Joe was part of. He was part of, and he ended up getting banned because he cheated, basically, and his dad lost all. I can't remember the quote. I should have had it in my top 10 quotes. but it was the quote about that he couldn't respect a man that was that's right. He couldn't respect a man whose hero was a criminal. Yeah. And that was what his son thought about his father. So it couples. 1 minute you're laughing, the next minute you could be just like tears in your eyes or a lump in your throat. That's one of the reasons, I think, that's what makes a film perfect, that it can make you feel different things at the turn of a hat from one scene to another. And I've always said, I mean, it's weird because the other movie we came on for this was Swiss Army Man. And when you talk to someone, they say, "Oh, what's the movie about?" And you say, "Oh, that's about Harry Potter as a dead farting corpse." Right, okay. This one, whenever anyone said to me, "What's it about?" I said, "It was about a guy that builds a baseball field and ghosts come and visit him." And they go, "Well, that sounds shit." I said, "Just watch it." And 9 times out of 10, people will say, "That's the most beautiful film I've ever seen." So you've got to give it a chance. You've got to get away from what people say that the movie is about and just take the whole experience in.
I think it's funny you mentioned there, Alice, about is it a comedy? Because I think for me, one of the real successes of this film is that it falls into that category of broad appeal via the use of really balanced genre signifiers. Do you know what I mean? So if you think of there's lots of other films, like what comes to mind? So films that you think, it is this, but it's also this. There's loads of films that are like that. You can name any successful blockbuster and it will always be like a bit funny, a bit this, a bit that. But for example, if you think of this, or you think of Ghostbusters, or Blues Brothers, or something maybe like Mrs. Doubtfire, where it's like it's funny, but it's also heartbreaking, but it's also got a message, and it's also got that. And I think that's one of the successes of this film, is it's like the characters are so likable. You want them, you want him and his wife to succeed because they're so likable. But on the other hand, it is really funny. That's what makes you like them. And then there's wider appeal, and there's also issues and themes that the film deals with that definitely plays to everybody, but certainly a lot of people, if it's not everybody. So I think that's one of the successes of the film.
It's a Capra movie. That's what it is. It's A Wonderful Life. It's that kind of movie.
Yeah, it's Singing in the Rain. It's which isn't Gabba, I know, but like something like that.
Yeah,
absolutely. So what else did you like, Alice?
So I loved the ambiance and the feel of the baseball field scenes. So I found something so soothing and cathartic about this floodlit baseball pitch in a cornfield on a hot summer's night in Iowa. Like, I wanted to be there. Like, they designed it so well. And I think that links really nicely to the fact that obviously one of the main themes that we're dealing with in this film is death and the afterlife. And this was really like a little piece of heaven for Ray, for the ghosts, and for me as the viewer.
Oh.
I just thought I wanted to be there, sitting on those bleachers, watching those
feels
games.
Like it's got like it feels like when they're on the pitch, it's got like a wash to it.
Oh,
like,
yeah, definitely.
It's almost like you go from the real world into that world, and it's almost like you're entering into a photograph or something like that. That's like, it's got that sepia tone to it. But anyway, Pav, let's come to you, because I know you must have loads and loads to say on this. So let rip. What do you love about this film? Let's hear it.
Right.
That's enough. Right.
Well, I mean, to be honest, there isn't really much more I can say apart from the fact that it is a perfect movie. Now, I love old Hollywood. I love old Hollywood. So to have someone like Burt Lancaster in it, and I did have a little look at some of the facts and figures about the movie, and it was weird because I was thinking about this today at work, just in getting my head up ready for tonight, thinking to myself, James Stewart would have been perfect as Archibald, Moonlight Graham. And I found out on one of the little bits of research that I did that the director originally wanted James Stewart, but he hadn't acted for like 10 years at the point. So I mean, what a shame they got Burt Lancaster instead. Which is his final movie appearance.
I think so, yeah.
And what I love about his appearance in that, the opening shot of him is just about as Spielberg as you can get. He's sort of backlit with this the tingly sort of ding-a-ling-ling-ling sort of sound going on as he turns around, very mysterious. And you think, fucking hell, it's Burt Lancaster. Oh my God, it's Burt Lancaster. And he's not in it for long, but there is a little bit of weirdness when it comes to his character, because Terrence Mann and Ray Kinsella are on a road trip. They're on their way home and they pick up this young boy. And it's Archibald Graham. It's him again, but him as a young boy. So that's the It's a Wonderful Life kind of moment of it. It's the things aren't. It's not supposed to be realistic. It's a fantasy, and I don't think they make movies like this anymore.
It felt for me. Sorry, Pav.
No, carry on.
Felt for me, and this might just be reflective of just the types of movies I've seen and my limited experience or whatever. But it felt like it might be the most unique film I've ever seen. Like, to take the themes that it does, to be the genre that it is, with this kind of sci-fi fantasy edge to it, but to be just about like a guy in his cornfield in Iowa. It just, I didn't know, I did not know where it was going to go at any moment. Like, it wasn't like the most, it's so difficult to try and explain. Like, it wasn't super complex or anything. But I still didn't know what was the point. Like, what was the point of anything? Like, where is it going? And what they did with it, I just felt like the whole way through, I just felt like I've never seen anything like this before. And then sometimes something really funny would happen. I'd be like, this is so funny as well. Like, how is it doing all these different things at once? It's like this kind of social drama thing. It's all about kind of love and loss and death and grief and having regrets in your life, but also there's ghosts. Like, it was wacky as hell. But
and it's
the
fact that Amy Madigan, who plays his wife, is the sort of, it's probably us, is the baseline. So she's the person telling him that she believes in him, but if you keep doing this, we're going to lose our farm. We're going to lose where we live, or we're going to have to rely on my slimy brother and his business associates to bail us out. And you're almost, when it gets to the point that Kevin Costner has built this wonderful baseball field and ploughed up half of his corn and keeps looking out, even at Christmas, is looking out on the field thinking something's going to happen. I know that something's going to happen. And it gets to the point that she's saying, look, really, there's nothing we can do now. We need to get rid of it. And you're sort of, I can remember the first time watching it, you can side with her. You're thinking, yeah. And even Kevin Costner's character starts thinking, she's right. And then his daughter comes in and goes, Dad, there's a man out on your lawn. And that whole scene, that for me, it was the first moment of the tears starting to well in the eyes because he realizes that the magic has worked. And he also knows that it is magic because Shoeless Joe can't come into his world. He has to go into back on the baseball is Shoeless Joe's world. He can't go past the white line, and he realizes that. But it's also that first time when he's got the ball and he says to himself, like in a commentator's voice, "I'm pitching to Shoeless Joe Jackson," and he's like, "It's." But that's also that little bit of misdirect, as you think that's who he's talking about. If you build it, he will come. It's Shoeless Joe Jackson. They're going to right his wrongs. And all of the other, what was the other ones? Go the Distance. And there's another one, isn't there? There's another.
Something about Don't Let It Eat Away at You or something, or...
that's going to bug me now. It's Go the Distance.
It's going to eat away at you.
It's Go the Distance. That wasn't it? I don't think.
It's going to eat away at you.
No. Is it something in that ilk, though, isn't it? Like, it's something
if you build
like
it,
that.
If you build it, he will come. Go the distance. Ease his pain.
Ease his pain.
Ease his pain.
That's sort of what I said.
Yeah, so I mean, just a little bit more succinct, isn't it? You had like the Mariah Carey vocals of that particular thing. You did like all the different notes where you could just do 3 notes. Yeah,
tried to get there.
Yeah, that was good though. Well done, Alex.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
But yeah, so it's all of those things you can think of. That means it's something to do with Shoeless Joe Jackson. It's something to do with Terrence Mann, and that's what Kevin Costner's character thinks it is. You know, he's going when they're at the school meeting, whatever you want to call it. He's there just doodling on ease his pain, and then he realizes that it's about Terrence Mann, and there's no reason why it should be, but in his mind, that's what it is. That's his next mission. He has to go and get Terrence Mann, take him to a baseball field because something is going to happen. So it ends up being a road trip movie as well, which is it's so, like you say, it's so many different movies. You can't put it into one. I call it a fantasy movie. That's what I've always called it. There isn't anything else I can say. It's just a perfect movie, Josh. It just is
a perfect movie.
A perfect movie.
It's funny how you mentioned how you don't feel like they make films like this anymore, because to some extent I'd agree with you there, but I think they're starting to creep back in.
I think that Everything Everywhere All at Once
is the first film that came to mind. Is like a film that sort of it mixes all the genres and it's got fantasy elements, but it also is ultimately about a feeling that everybody has, but it's dressed up in everything else.
Swiss Army Man. Swiss Army Man's another one.
Yeah, same director.
It's like directors lean into this kind of this mild fantasy. Like, it doesn't always have to be, you know, dragons and wizards and magic and all that. I love all that, but not everything has to be that.
No.
So you can do these sort of like, I guess, diet fantasy, mild fantasy, where it's just like, oh yeah, everything's normal. There's just this one thing that's different. It's like, oh yeah, they're just in Iowa and everything's normal, but there are ghosts and they can only come to this baseball field. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But there's opportunity in that, I think. And I think if we start going down that route, we might get a couple of decades of really interesting films, because things were getting a bit repetitive. Yeah. So it will be nice to breathe some new life into the industry.
So say to me, Alice, you think comic book movies are repetitive. Say it. Go on.
I think, what's repetitive?
Comic book movies, say it. Say you think that people smashing the shit out of cities for 20 minutes at the end of the film is repetitive.
Listen, it's hella repetitive, but I do still enjoy them. It's fine. Like, it's fine, and there's a place for them.
But it's not wrong, is it?
No, it's not. It's not wrong. And it's come so, unlike other genres, it's come so thick and fast. It's got old really quickly, whereas it took ages for, like, you know, sci-fi films to come and go, or westerns to come and go. Whereas this, they went, do you like comic book films? Yeah, they're all right, yeah. About 5 a year. Oh, what? Yeah.
And then 8 TV shows as well.
Yeah. So anyway, back to your point. No, I think that's a really good point, which is it's that sort of film that appeals to a real part of human nature that that a lot of films don't appeal to anymore. But I do think that they're starting to. Okay then, so let's move on to things that we might change about the film, or that we perhaps didn't like about the film. Now, I don't get the impression there's going to be loads, but let's see if we've got anything. I'll come to you first, Alice. Is there anything? Are you going to break Pav's heart? Pav thinks this is perfect. Is it perfect? Is anything perfect?
I got 2 words for you. No. Chewing tobacco.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, you
I
fucking
could
hate
live without that.
Yeah.
I could live without
Mouth
that.
noises.
Munch, 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 spit. Munch, 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 spit. Brown sludge coming out. You know what?
Too much information, Alice.
It was only that was just my Saturday night.
Hey!
It was only one guy. I got the ding. It was only one guy, to be fair, and he only did it a few times. Like, it wasn't super reoccurring, so I could live with it. But yeah, I wasn't a fan as soon as it happened. The other thing was, this isn't really a dislike, but a moment of confusion, shall we say? So I was confused after the moment that Karen, she's kind of pushed off the bleachers by Ray's brother-in-law and nearly dies, right? Because she nearly chokes on her hot dog. And then everyone just gets over that moment really quickly. And I found that a little bit jarring. Thoughts? Have?
Well, she was okay. She lived.
She was, but she was like, he pushed her off the bleachers. This grown man, her uncle.
Is it not meant to be that she falls because he's trying to push Kevin Costner?
I feel like he really grabs her, doesn't he? He's like, what are you doing to your daughter? She's going mad because she can see the ghosts as well. He grabs her and says like, she's gone crazy or something. And then
I think
falls.
they sort of and they tussle. Kevin Costner and that guy tussle, and then she sort of falls off. But I think it's because of the whole thing. What always made me laugh about that moment is she is literally choking on a hot dog.
Yeah.
And his wife is sort of going, "Oh my God, quick, get some help." So she's still choking. Kevin Costner stands up and goes, "Wait a minute." Wait a minute, because he sees the young Archibald Graham, who's a doctor, but he's young. He can't, so he has to change into old Archibald Graham, the doctor. So while his daughter's life is ebbing away as she is clasping for any breath she can get because of this stuck wiener in her mouth, he's going, wait. Just wait a second, please. No, the face is blue. It doesn't matter. Just wait a second, because there's a guy over here that might be able to, that can just put his hands and fingers in her mouth and pop this sausage out. Anybody could do that. So I ding that one as well.
Just do the Heimlich, right, or something. Like, it was just a bit.
But no, we got to wait for this guy to change first before he comes in. But then, so I'm assuming that everybody is so like their minds are blown because of this. She's all right, don't worry about that. But we've just seen this guy change from like a 16-year-old to a 70-year-old. What the hell's going on? And then at that point, the brother-in-law can also see, when did all these ball players get here? So he's now a believer as well. But
the brother-in-law is a proper late 80s movie antagonist.
Oh, without a doubt.
And he's just like, what does he do for a job? Business.
Of course.
Business. I'm the businessman doing the business.
Your partner's in what? Business.
But that's a great moment when
your job?
he's walking across the baseball diamond, and they just pitch a ball just before, because he obviously can't see any of the baseball players, and he's going, "Hi everyone," and the ball just misses him, and then the guy's swinging the bat, and they goes to try and grab him. That's a great moment. I've always wanted to look to see if there was an actual ball, or whether that. I mean, the guy. You get one of those in the side of the head and you're going to know it. But.
Oh, yeah. I don't think I've ever seen the brother in anything else either.
He was in 30-something, the old 80s TV show. You guys are too young for that.
I thought you meant the film. I'm sure there's a film called 30-something.
You were watching Rod Hull and Emu at that time.
Yeah, I mean, we're too young for that as well.
I bet you are.
Thomas the Tank Engine.
Tell me that you don't. You must know who Rod Hull and Emu are, sure.
Yeah, I know. He fell off a roof or whatever. Yeah.
Well, Rod Hull did.
Yeah.
He was the green...
Yeah,
is it the green bird?
It's an emu.
Green bird with a childish.
No,
you're thinking of Keith Harrison Orville.
Orville.
Rod Hull was
different creepy puppet, Alice.
Yeah, he had the big emu, and he used to grab people and then just grab them by the face.
Think David Brent. Think David Brent in The Office.
Oh yeah, but I don't know the emu.
But yeah, because also all the way through it, when young Archie was in it, I was like, I know him. What's he been in? And it's the guy from Pulp Fiction, isn't it?
It is.
Look at the big brain on bread. It's that guy, isn't it?
See what again, motherfucker? Yeah. And he was also in JFK as well. He was one of the decoy Lee Harvey Oswald.
Yeah. I fell asleep. So.
There you go, your favourite, Josh.
Movie.
Anything else, Alice, apart from the chewing tobacco? Because you don't like chewing tobacco. You don't like mouth
chewing.
noises. There's no fish in it, so I can't.
There's no fish in it, so that was nice. But yeah, I just wish people didn't have mouths. I don't want to see you chewing. I don't want to see you eating. I don't want to see nothing. Chewing gum, fucking gross. Do that, all that. And so just something I noticed. This isn't a dislike, but I suppose I would call it maybe a bit of a surprise. So it was surprising, I think, how prominent and how early on the build it and he will come line is in there. So I knew that this quote was associated with the film, and I thought it might be in slightly like a more subtle way, or that it would at least happen a bit later on in the film once the main part of the story had really got going. But it's pretty much straight away after that sort of initial opening montage, and it's so prominent. Like, it wasn't something profound that someone was thinking or something that held loads of emotional weight later in the film. Like, it was immediate, and it was this disembodied voice whispering, build it and he will come. So I think in my head I was just expecting more of a build up to it, and for it to be like this moment sort of 2/3 the way through the film where suddenly he realizes, oh, I need to build it and then he'll come, sort of thing. But so I was just so surprised that it was instant. It was like the film started and we were like, build it and he will come. And it was like, oh, already? Like, fucking hell, I did need to get used to this first.
Sitting down in your seat with your popcorn. Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, like it would be like if they said, like, Luke, I am your father, or, the Force, may the Force be with you, like in the first 5 minutes of the film. It's just a bit like, whoa, wasn't expecting it just then. So that was just a bit of a surprise, but not a dislike, obviously, but just I was a bit like, it was a little bit jarring, I think.
So, Pav, can you bring yourself to say anything?
Is there anything?
We try to be balanced, but you're the guest, so if you don't have anything, that's fine. But could you find even one hair on that beautiful Costner head out of place?
I honestly can't think of anything.
Wow.
No, I can't. I can't think of anything that I can say negative about that movie. There isn't. I'm trying to seriously think of something. I mean, the brother-in-law is a bit of a douchebag, but he's supposed to be a douchebag. So you can't even.
The villain, isn't he?
Yeah, you cannot have a go at the movie for that, because that is his job. That is his job in the movie. And the fact that he has a little bit of redemption in the fact that he does see them and believe. Okay, when he does start believing, the first thing he thinks of is, we're going to be rich. We're going to make a hell of a load of money. So it is Mr. Business again. That's how he's thinking about it. I honestly can't think of anything. I just can't.
What about the fact that they go to a sporting event and a hot dog and a beer is like £2?
I mean, fair enough.
That's pretty bad, isn't it?
Back in those days, Josh, I can remember when it used to be a hot dog and a beer for £2.
Instead of
back
now,
in the days,
3 items, only $19.99. That's not a deal. Like,
it's not a deal.
Two pies and a beer.
What about you, Josh? Anything that you didn't like about the film, or perhaps would change?
I just thought it was rubbish. No, so
you can say that though, Josh, if you want. I would expect you to.
For me, for me, it all folds into one thing, which is I think we could have done with, and this is something I picked on before, so maybe it's just a particular bugbear of mine, but I think more could have been done to outline the rules of the world. Now, you might say that actually the lack of rules is what drives it forward, because this is the other side of the coin, which is something I don't think I've said before, but one thing that kept me engaged all the way through this is that they don't spoon feed you. He's just driven by this mystical sort of force and voice and feeling that he has to do these things. And some films now would be like, because of this, he has to do the thing. Oh, God. In the end, it all ends up. Whereas this is just like, no, he's just driven by this feeling. And I think what makes the end particularly emotive, if it got to you in that way, is that there's a realization of, what actually was driving him was grief and loss and wanting to see his dad and unfulfilled feelings and unfinished, stories and all that sort of thing. But the other side of it is it did leave me asking a couple of questions. So, for example, this went off in my head when you said about Archie and the Doctor, Alice, which is that I don't think it's that clear that he and old and young Archie are the same person. Now, that might be on purpose, so that at the end you have that realization. You go, oh, it's the same guy.
Do you not? Because when he's asleep in the back of the VW camper and they're driving down, they have a little conversation, Terrence Mann and Ray Kinsella, saying it's a bit weird about how he talks about, traveling up and down the country and just playing baseball, because I haven't done that for years.
Because no one does it for years, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that was the thing. It's interesting what you're saying as well about the ending. Because those three statements, that ease is pain, go the distance, and if you build it, they will come, they're so sort of ambiguous that you think that they mean this, and they mean that, and they mean this. And that scene at the end when he knows that it's his father that's there, and the whole... A warning now, I will get emotional just talking about that fucking scene.
Wow.
Because when he says to him, is this heaven? He goes, no, it's Iowa. And then he looks over at his family and he says, well, maybe this is heaven, and then it gets, I'll tell you then, the one thing I find slightly schmaltzy is when he then says to his father, is there a heaven? But he turns to him, and then straight away I'm thinking to myself, that's ridiculous, because when he turns back and he says, oh yeah, he said, because that's what, fucking hell, he says, because he says that's where dreams come true. And then he just looks at his family again and says, well, then this is heaven. And that whole point, and because when they're coming to the realization that it is his dad, I think his wife is over in the bleachers and she says, ease his pain. This is what it's all about. Go the distance. It all makes perfect sense that those statements that he was hearing in his head was nothing to do with Terrence Mann. It was nothing to do with Shoeless Joe Jackson. It was all about him. It was all about his father. It was all about righting that wrong. His father wasn't there for him while he was a kid and grew up really old, really fast. And he just had that moment. And that whole moment, I'm going to go and watch it again when we finish, because I genuinely feel it's one of the greatest scenes ever committed to celluloid.
Okay, then, so let's move on to talking about the critical reception, and then we will decide, well, I think we know where it's going, if it's a classic or not. So, Alice, have you seen the critical reception, or have you managed to avoid it?
I have managed to avoid it.
Okay, what about you, Pav?
I must admit, I haven't looked, no.
Good.
That means we get to guess.
Ooh.
Alice, let's have a guess.
Yes.
What would you give it, and how do you think it did?
What would I give it? Probably, easily a late 7. I don't know if it would creep. Maybe, I'll go bang on 8. I think I'll go bang on 8. I'd probably give it an 8. It did have quite an emotional impact on me. I did feel it was quite a unique, not only a unique story, but quite unique storytelling as well. I quite like the idea, the ambiance, like I said, Iowa at sunset. Oh, gorgeous. So I did get quite a lot out of it, and I would definitely recommend it to people as well. And I reckon it's a really good conversation starter because of the sort of various different aspects of it. I would give it an 8. I reckon it probably got that, or at least close to. Okay. I'd be surprised if it got much lower.
Okay.
So I'll say 8. I'll say bang on 8 is what I'd give it, and I reckon that's what it got.
All right. Okay. Pav? What about you? What do you obviously think it's perfect? So
I'm going to go a 9.5.
Wow.
Although I suppose if it's perfect, it should be a 10. But I'm going to go 9.5 because nothing is 100% perfect, is it? Nothing is.
Well, meet me in St. Louis. I'll tell you.
What time? What time? It's going to take me a while to get there, Alice. But
it got 100% when we did that.
Did it really?
Classics. It did. Yeah.
Okay.
Mad day.
But in regards to the critics, I don't know. I don't know whether it was like It's a Wonderful Life, and whether when it came out, was it classed as
was it appreciated
classic
sort of
then or not? I mean, I would say, I think I agree with Alice. I'm going to say it's going to be around about an 8.
Okay, let's have a look
for that. Yeah,
let's have a look. So at the time of recording on IMDb, it gets, interesting to see the reaction to this, 7.5.
Oh my god.
It's not miles away.
Over on Rotten Tomatoes, though, pulling it back, this might make you a bit happier, Pav. The audience give it 86%.
Ooh.
And the critics, the critics, give it 88%.
Ooh,
so
wow.
that averages out at 83 or 8.3. So not too far,
but no
just over what Alice said. So, Alice, is that fair? And is it a classic?
I mean, I definitely think that is fair. I think it's a good film. Like, it just is. Like, it's a well-made film. It's a well-told story.
That should be on the poster. It's a good film.
It's a film.
Yeah. You want a film? I've got one for you. This is a film.
Yeah.
Is it a classic? I think yes, because I think you can know so much about it without having seen it. I think the idea of the ghosts being on the baseball field, I'm sure I've seen that in Family Guy. And I know this is always like the point of reference to, is it a classic or not? Well, they parodied it in Family Guy, so I guess it must be. But it felt really familiar. The quotes felt really familiar. And I think it obviously had a real impact on people. I think in the same way that it's had an impact on Pav. Like, I think that might be sort of quite a strong feeling amongst the people who did like this film, and it's like really stayed with them because it is quite an emotional story, but just told in such an interesting way. So I reckon it is definitely a classic, personally.
Okay. Pav, do we even need to ask?
No, but I did just realise if you've got any American listeners or even people watching it on the YouTube. Oh my god! On
the internet.
On the internet, I just realised just what sacrilege I'm wearing a LA Dodgers cap and a New York Yankees top. I must imagine that people there are tearing their hair out.
I think there's riots. I think
there will be. Yeah. Think, what the hell is he doing? That's a terrible American accent. I just can't do American accents. I don't know why.
Yeah, but how many Americans can do a Gloucester accent? You know what I mean?
More than I can do an American accent. I know that for a fact. Mine always just sounds like Vic Reeves doing it. Right, gotta tell you. That just how I do it. It's never good. But yes, it's a classic. Bona fide classic.
I agree. I think we can safely say this. At the end of the day, it comes down to it's infiltrated culture in a way that you know stuff about this film without have to have seen it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that says it all. And similar to you, Alice, I think it's a great time. Lovely sort of Sunday afternoon, cup of tea, pop this on after the roast sort of film. It's a great film. It's a Christmas Day film. Do you know what I mean? It's one of them.
I think in a couple of ways as well, it is quite timeless.
Yeah.
Because like it does still feel relevant. It's not necessarily just dealing with things that were happening in the late 80s. And when they're talking about like banning the book and stuff, I was like, oh yeah, that's very relevant today. So that was interesting. So it's like the themes and the ideas that it deals with, I think, do like they're lasting, aren't they? It's not like, oh, well, this was only relevant back then and I don't really get it now or whatever.
It is set when it's set. It's not like it is set in the 80s because he talks about the year he was born and all that. But like we've talked on before, it's not one of those films that's set in the late 80s where they've gone, this is in the 80s. Mm-hmm. Look at this. Yeah. Look at all these fucking 80s songs and 80s clothes. It's like, it's like you say, it is timeless because it doesn't look like it is from that particular time. So yeah, we're all agreed. Classic.
Yay.
Ring the bell if you want.
That's only for double entendres and and things like that. So you got to be a bit mucky if you want me to do that, Josh. Say something mucky. Come on, Josh.
I'd like you to plough my field of dreams.
That was perfect.
Very good.
Perfect.
So, as we said, Field of Dreams is a classic. Pav, where can people look out for your stuff? Thank you very much for coming on.
Oh,
obviously.
Thank you very much for having me.
Not the first time, won't even be the last.
Oh, bless your heart. Just on the socials, Top 10 at Top 10 Pods, and obviously all your podcast providers. Just look for the Top 10 of anything podcast. Thank you, and I'm sure we'll have you back as well, guys, because I love you.
Thank you very much. We love you too. And when you come back on to talk about Waterworld, I will, of course, be on holiday.
I can't wait, honestly.
Very excited.
Let me tell you about the moments that make me cry in that movie.
Pav, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Pav.
Thank you.
Well, there we go. Another classic done. Field of Dreams. Lovely little film, that, Alice. I'm glad you picked it. And glad that you had Pav on as well, because it was clear that his love for the film was clear to see, and it's always nice when we have people on to talk about films like that. Do make sure you check out Top 10. We'll put all the links in the episode notes, and we'll throw some stuff out there on the socials as well. If you'd like to get in touch with us, it's filmsandthatpod@gmail.com. We're over on Patreon. If you search for just Films and That Pod, look for us there. Any support you can give us is massively appreciated. Loads of stuff out there, early episodes, bonus content, etc. On all the social medias, as you know, search for Just Films and That on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you get your social media. I tell you what, Alice, we're on the television as well, aren't we?
We are indeed. Every Friday evening from 6 p.m, you can find me and Josh talking about our favourite underrated and underseen films on the local TV network. So if you live in Birmingham, Bristol, Leeds, Liverpool or the northeast of England, you can find us on Channel 7 on Freeview. Or if you live in North Wales or South Wales, you can find us on Channel 8 on Freeview. I'm also uploading all the videos to Dailymotion, if you can believe it, if you know what Dailymotion is.
I just don't believe it, Alice.
You just don't believe it. But if you search for Just Films and That on Dailymotion, you can see what exactly it is that we're doing. You can see us chatting about all our favourite underrated and underseen films.
Yes, there we go. Lots of ways to see us, hear us, and thank you very much, as ever, for listening. See you next week. It's goodbye from me. Cheerio!
Bye!